This is Behind the Headlines, with behind-the-scenes analysis on issues affecting Pennsylvanians, sponsored by the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy. Now, here's your host.
Hi, from Erie to Philadelphia and Scranton to Pittsburgh, it's Behind the Headlines. I'm Charlie Greenewald, Senior Fellow of the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy, and I'm joined by my co-host, Mara Donnelly. Mara, welcome.
Hello, Charlie.
Why, today we're going to talk about an issue that is in the news a lot. We hear lots of people talking about the concept of entrepreneurship. But perhaps sometimes we're not quite sure what they mean by entrepreneurship. So we're invited back with us Mike Brubaker, former Senator, State Senator Brubaker from Lancaster County, who is the CEO of Blackford Ventures, to talk about entrepreneurship, and one of his clients, Matt Lutz, who we're going to spend time with in just a moment. But why don't we turn to you first, Mike, and ask you again just to quickly give our viewers a refresher on what is Blackford Ventures and what do you do with them?
Well, thank you so much for having me on the show again.
It's nice to have you back.
Absolutely thrilled to be here. I'm thrilled to be here with Matt Lutz. We're going to hear his story, as you just said, in a little bit. It's an exciting story, actually. But Blackford Ventures, I started in January 1 of this past year, in 2015. It's a small boutique private equity firm. We also have real estate component within it. We have a great real estate team. So we're buying and selling commercial, industrial real estate, and we're making investments in people that are success-oriented. That's how I like to position it. So our tagline is, we invest in success, and I like it. So not only do you, in investment world, not only do you have to have a successful idea, but you have to have the personality and the perseverance to kind of gut through the good times as well as the bad times to make it through. And we're looking for those people that can actually do that and have demonstrated that in the past. And when those two things line up, a successful idea and the ability to execute, then our firm likes to invest.
Well, I started my own company about 8 years ago, and I would define entrepreneurship when the economy is tanking as crazy. Sometimes it can be pretty insane. So how exactly do you define entrepreneurship, and what are you looking for, and what are the qualities you're looking for? You mentioned some of them, but what is it to you?
Well, most of our viewers no doubt know what entrepreneurship means to them. Some maybe don't, because it's a complex word. But for me, and I've given this some level of thought in preparation for this television show, I don't believe entrepreneurship is optional. I don't believe it's casual. I think it's the absolute lifeblood of the American economy, and I honestly believe that. I mean, and entrepreneurship is people that take their hard-earned savings and place it in a position of risk. They can lose it all. And they can lose it all, and why are they doing that? They're doing that to grow the economy. Of course, they want to yield some profitability as a result, and they should. And we should not disparage that process of profitability for people. But in the meantime, they're placing their capital at risk. They're growing the economy when they're successful. When they fail, they learn, and entrepreneurs get back up and do it all again. It's just amazing process. But it's a very small slice of people that have this tolerance for risk that really make America great.
Well, I think it's also a significant economic indicator. What are you seeing in terms of the growth of entrepreneurs in this area?
Well, Maura, that's a great question. When we first started Blackford Ventures, I realized it would be a complete failure if we opened our doors, let people know that we're investing in success, and the phone doesn't ring. In other words, that would be a problem. In other words, people's capital is already secured. They don't need a new player in the marketplace.
Or they're not willing to take a risk.
You're right.
Yeah.
Or they're not growing. And what we found is the opposite. The phone's ringing off the hook. We have more deals coming. We call it deal flow. Our deal flow is exceptionally high. And as a result of that, we need to constantly narrow the field of vision in which we're choosing to make investments. So more and more we want to go with people with some level of proven success. But again, the special guest we have here is really outside of that. Here's a brand new entrepreneur just starting out, has no real record of success other than he has a lot of internal fortitude. And I can't wait for your viewers to meet him.
Well, why don't we turn to Matt? Matt, welcome to the show.
Thanks for being here.
It's so nice to have you. And you are a recent Millersville University graduate?
I am, from the business management program.
Okay.
So when Senator says new, he really means new.
Yeah, like
yes.
3 weeks ago I graduated.
So how did you meet Blackford Ventures, and how did they take you under their wing?
Last summer I found out just through actually selling water bottles at a golf tournament. I realized I could create revenue by doing something on my own. So I realized I wanted to be an entrepreneur. But then it's like, okay, well, I don't have any ideas. So I spent a lot of time, and actually a lot of it was tough. Like I would go to sleep and I couldn't sleep sometimes because I knew I wanted to have something, like something was missing in me, and I didn't know what it was. And I'm like, well, I want something to work on at night, after I work out, after golf, after school. So it was like an internal drive. It seems crazy. But, and then after a while, I'd write things down. I got the idea driving home. I'm like, well, no one does customized shoelaces. I've been in the fitness world forever in sports. So I realized that there's crazy socks and shoes, but no one has crazy laces. So I'm like, sweet, now I have the idea. How do I get it from my brain to my shoes? So I had $20 when I decided to do it, and I made posters, flyers with my buddy from back home that said odd jobs and more. And we posted them around Hampstead in the middle of winter when it was 30 degrees, got 3 phone calls back. We made like $175. And we lined up a supplier in China. So now I have money, but I don't know if the laces are going to get here. I don't know this guy. It's from China. I've never done work like this. So it was tough for me. I made a pros and cons list. If I do it, if I don't. And do I risk all the money for paying bills this semester and not know if I'm going to get them? And I wrote it out. I'm like, well, you know what? So many people have ideas, great ideas, and they don't know or they don't do them because they'll wait to a later time. And I didn't want to wait. I wanted to do it now.
Or they're scared.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, it's scary.
So I believed in it enough to risk all of my money and
all $20.
all $20 that turned
all
into.
in.
That's all it takes.
And they came. So that was the first step. Then I started selling them. I made social media pages at Fearless Laces, and I did the pitch competition for my entrepreneurship class. And I actually was ready to go. Like I thought I was going to win, and I choked. And I couldn't believe it. I like stopped mid-pitch, and I froze. I didn't know what happened. So I'm like, great. Like and this was the qualifier for the Shark Tank.
Okay, so this is a local Shark Tank competition
At the school,
at
yes.
Millersville. Okay.
So I froze up, and I'm like, I had rehearsed too much. It wasn't coming from my heart or my brain. It was coming from what I practiced. So my teacher came up to me, and she said, Matt, I know you want to do it. Like, she knew I was very upset, angry. She's like, do you want to do it again just to know you can do it? And I'm like, back in my head, I'm like, not really, I can't win. She's like, it won't count for score, so you won't go to Shark Tank. I'm like, does it really matter that much? I can't go to Shark Tank. And in the back of your head, you're also like, well, what if I mess up again? So I'm like, you know what, if I don't do it, I'm not living my brand of fearless. I'll just throw them away if I can't go up again. Although I was scared, I went up and did it and killed it. And they said,
Killed it, meaning good.
Good.
Yes.
Sorry.
It's
Sorry.
a young person
I knew what he
says.
Sorry. So I did well, and
He nailed it.
nailed it. So they took 5 to Shark Tank, and they said, we'll make a 6th spot for you, which was crazy. And then I called my dad on the way home, and I said, Dad, they made a spot for me. I blew it, but I'm never going to do that again. I'm going to hammer this till I become a good public speaker and everything. Like, I never really was good, and now I love it. So I learned from my failure, and I didn't like slow down and say, oh, can I be an entrepreneur? It wasn't even like a question. It was, how am I going to get better? So I made it my weakness, my strength by speaking in front of people. Now I love it. And then after I won Shark Tank, I got to spoke at a board meeting, and he was there, and it was
The rest
a dream
is
come
history.
true.
Yeah.
Well,
Crazy.
And you have invested in his company.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us what about these shoelaces made Blackford invest?
Well,
is it Matt you're investing?
It's Matt.
Yeah.
So so I'm on the board of Millersville's entrepreneur class, and Matt came and presented, and I handwrote on my card, please give me a call. He did that. He followed up. And I did that intentionally. I wanted to see if he actually would call, and he did. And he was persistent. We got an appointment. We sat down and we kind of looked at his business plan and his model to take this to the world. But really, he's selling more than shoelaces. He didn't have time to get into the entire story, but as he tells me the story, the shoelace has the word fearless on it. Mm-hmm. And he wants to send a message to young people that there's a barrier in many young people's life, and that's called fear. Fear of failure. So if he can deliver a message to young people, get rid of that sense of failure, gut it out, go for it anyway, then young people will meet more frequently with success. So I love the story. I love his passion, his ability. What he needed was a little bit of capital to buy some additional shoelaces. Didn't want that to be a barrier. So he's not a typical Blackford Ventures client. No. We're usually writing checks for significantly more money than what Matt is asking for. But we at Blackford believe in finding young people with some vision and some optimism for the world. We also believe in philanthropy. We're doing an awful lot to invest in feeding hungry people in Lancaster County. We call that the Blackford Challenge. So I'm really excited about our company and how we reach out to very strong regional, global companies. I'm really proud of the fact that we can align ourselves with young people like Matt, who will be successful, there's no doubt about it. And then I love the fact that we do some philanthropic work in the community.
So Matt, what's next for Fearless?
We were actually talking about this
More
last
colors?
time.
More colors?
Possibly more colors.
Okay, good.
Now it's, like he said, I didn't get time to explain it, but my whole thing with this is kind of, it's a lifestyle to me, to be fearless. Like, it's just taking all the people around you and all the thoughts and opinions that weigh on everyone. Everyone's surrounded by negativity all the time. So if I can give somebody something small every day that helps them get out of bed and achieve their goals, and just think, I'm not going to buy into what everyone else wants me to do. I'm not going to buy into what sometimes you think you can't do. And just demolish your fears and get uncomfortable. And like get out of your comfort zone so you can get to the higher place you want to be. So what we were saying was we're going to try to target some not-for-profits and like small stories or locally and fundraise for them at the same time so we can give back as well as expand the brand. So that's the next big goal.
Well, I guess part of it, when you break down entrepreneurship down, I guess part of it is creativity, and you've shown that. Yeah. And part of it, I guess, also then is marketing. You have a wonderful idea, and now you have to sell the product. How are you going to work with Blackford? How is Blackford working with you on marketing?
So right now, I have my own social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and a new app called Periscope, which you do a live broadcast, which is pretty cool. So I'm doing those on my own. But as far as Blackford and me and Senator, we're working together. We're going to both try to write letters and then send them out to different not-for-profits and see if we can, hopefully I can speak at maybe their dinners or whatnot, just to tell the story and get those families and anyone that I can affect positively with the brand. That's how we want to get out there. And then after targeting big groups, we'll be able to have word of mouth.
Well, I'm a huge fan of Shark Tank, the show, and try to watch it as much as possible, even go back and watch the old ones all the time. And I have no doubt that if you were on that show, they would just love you and do whatever they could. So I think what you've done is brilliant. I mean, I think it's good for the community. It's good for a young entrepreneur, and it's just we need more Matts in this world and more yous.
I think, yeah, I do think many times the private equity community looks at the multi-million-dollar deals and overlooks the Matts of the world, and I think that's a huge mistake. I think it's a mistake for private equity, and certainly a mistake for the youth of today. So I hope this television show inspires some others to
call you?
Either to call us or for them to make investments in youth in their communities, because that's where our future is.
Well, Mike, you took this deal away from Mark Cuban. So congratulations on that.
That's huge. I'm going to write that one down.
Okay. And good luck to both of you as you pursue this venture. And good luck to you as we sort of promote entrepreneurship as well, Mike. Okay, we'll be back with the second segment of Behind the Headlines right after this.
Behind the Headlines is brought to you as a public service by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, helping hospitals provide healing, health, and hope to communities across the state. And by the Pennsylvania Business Council, envisioning a commonwealth in which residents enjoy a very high quality of life in sustainable communities. The council works aggressively to define key long-term policy strategies and solutions to make the commonwealth more competitive, creating and sustaining a better Pennsylvania. Additional underwriting provided by the Worrell Corporation Foundation, based in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, by the Edward H. and Jeannie Arnold Foundation, and by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association, Business in Pennsylvania is our business. Behind the Headlines is also supported as a public service by Daily Express, transporting construction, farm, and industrial equipment throughout the United States. And by Blackford Ventures, LLC, a private equity firm seeking to make significant investments in real estate, proven business enterprises, and their leaders. Find out more at www.blackfordventures.com. And by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Visit pahighwayinfo.org.
Hi, welcome back to the second segment of Behind the Headlines. On this segment, Maura and I are welcoming back Dave Patti, who is the President and CEO of the Pennsylvania Business Council. Welcome back, Dave.
Great to be with you.
We love having you here.
Well, and there are certain important topics to talk about. We find not only at the state level is international trade important to our state economy, but of course we are seeing a whole array of things happening in Washington, D.C., aren't we, Dave, with this whole discussion between Congress and the President on fast track and on international trade. I was wondering if you could sort of give our viewers an outline of the importance of international trade for America and what's going on in Washington right now in regard to it.
Sure, you're right. It's been in the news in a lot of different facets in the last few weeks. And Congress has been debating it, and it creeps into the presidential sweepstakes for 2016 as well. 95% of the world's population are not Americans. You know, they live outside our borders. What? So if we want to, it's a shock to a lot of Americans, but if we want to grow sales, you're going to have to sell to people outside of our borders. And I mean, that's just a simple fact. And so it's increasingly in really throughout the latter part of the 20th century, but people start to recognize that export mattered. Now, it had always mattered. From the day of the colonial era, it mattered. But that's where the growth is, and companies have really tried to be poised for it, but that also means public policy that supports it. In Pennsylvania, we export something like $40 billion in goods and services, and we'll talk about the services then. But it really matters. There are almost 200,000 direct jobs just in Pennsylvania alone in exporting.
How many?
200,000. Wow. And probably something like 1 million of our 6 million members of the workforce have some kind of relationship to foreign trade. But just in direct jobs, 200,000 jobs. So it really matters. Probably not a big surprise that Pennsylvania's #1 export destination, our biggest trading partner, is Canada. Mexico's big, but we also send to China and South Korea and to Western Europe. So it does matter. 28% of Ontario's natural gas 2 winters ago came from Pennsylvania because it's closer and transmission was therefore less costly than Canadian natural gas from Western Canada. So it matters. It's big. And a lot of people think of the big companies, you know, the GEs, the Westinghouse, the Air Products, Dow Chemical, you know, the household names in Pennsylvania. But 80% of our exports come from small business. We also have a lot of foreign companies in Pennsylvania, Bayer, Siemens, B. Braun, ArcelorMittal, who have big operations here, Johnson Matthey. So the trade works in both directions, and it's really to our advantage to get involved in good public policy there.
Okay, so to me, you know, if you're going to be a successful company, you've got to export. And so we've got a lot of great stuff going. What's going on? Is that in danger of being stopped?
It seems to me, you know, as a no-brainer. Maybe I have a bias here.
That's the word I was going to use. It's kind of a no-brainer.
Go back to presidential politics, 1992, and Ross Perot and the Great Sucking Sound, as we were starting to talk about NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, and Ross Perot articulated, you know, all those years ago, a fear of organized labor, and it's been interesting for this time. The far right and the far left have started to come together in their skepticism of trade. As organized labor thought that we would be exporting jobs, that really what would happen is that American companies would go abroad to seek out lower-priced hourly wages. And to some degree, that certainly happened.
It has happened.
Environmentalists said back in 1992, and continued to say, well, you'll go to places that don't have the same environmental controls, and you'll do this to escape environmental regulations. Now, when American companies go to other places and set up, I'm not saying that the wage rates are the same as America, but largely they take their human resources practices with them, and largely they take their environmental practices with them, because what we have seen over those years since then, in the 20, 30 years since we really got into this, is that as these countries have more wealth from trade, they also take their regulatory base goes up. It more and more mimics that of Europe and America. So it's better to build your plant for global environmental standards from day one than to try and retrofit it later.
How do you respond to the criticism of the far left and the far right of international trade or of globalization? They just simply say globalization is just the replacement of American labor with cheap foreign labor, and that's what it is.
Well,
how would you respond to that?
I mean, it's a leveling ground, and we're seeing wage rates around the world go up. We're seeing prosperity around the world go up, and when prosperity goes up, healthcare goes up, human services improve and increase, education improves. You have to improve the education in these countries in order for there to be a workforce that can take those jobs. Because even in the lowest wage places, automation is replacing workers. So it's really still about the value add of education anywhere you go in the world. And I think it's true too in these. We long used to say democracies don't go to war with each other. Well, maybe what we really didn't recognize is what democracies had were integrated economies. And today, integrated economies transcend political ideology. That a communist nation like China and a capitalist nation and democratic nation like the United States can come together on economics. And you know, I have to think that the other upside of globalization is also more stability.
Well, there's on the federal level, there are agreements and partnerships and coalitions being formed, and some with Asia Pacific, some with China, some with European Union. You know, there's a whole host of things happening. Good, bad, indifferent. What are these going to be beneficial?
There are detractors to all of them.
Okay.
I maybe naively think that every time we sit down and talk to other people and try and work out our differences peacefully and in a legal agreement, we're better off. Okay. They are an alphabet soup, so they get confusing to any even people who are involved. Right. Way too many T's. And the one that's not a T is the XM, or as it's pronounced, which is not the satellite radio, but export-import is really XIM, but doesn't get said that way. That's been big in the news recently. That was something that was started in 1934 by FDR and the New Deal as a way even then to stimulate trade. And yes, big companies look to it, but so do small companies. There's a Bassett's Ice Cream down in Philadelphia wanted to get involved in foreign trade. Selling ice cream to India and other places had a lot of risk involved. Hard to get the financing, cash flow, all of that kind of thing. The Export-Import Bank provides financing to get you going, but also provides essentially insurance rather than your typical credit, so that if the people you're selling to abroad don't make good on the payments, that you get the payment from the Export-Import Bank. It spends actually only a few $1 million a year. It's really not a huge thing, but what it does and what it stimulates has been huge. There's a mining equipment company that comes to mind in Pittsburgh, DRA Taggart, has been exporting coal mining technology to other nations that want to, China and other places, made in the Pittsburgh area, but making that possible with that financing. So I mean, that kind of thing is critically important. And then you get into the trade deals themselves, which years ago were about tariffs. They were about the taxes paid, to protect goods. We have, through the World Trade Organization and other ways, really reduced some of the tariff barriers. There are other barriers today that we talk about. So in Europe, they don't, there's GMO, the genetically modified organisms, that are perhaps a valid fear, or perhaps just a way to try and protect European foodstuffs from competition from American foodstuffs. Different people have various views there.
Yeah.
I tend to come with the latter. There is fear of American energy companies that would come in and do fracking in Europe. And then there are things that we have fears of cross subsidies. Airbus is subsidized heavily by the German government, and DHL. And there's postal regulations. If we try and transmit something from here to Europe or abroad, how will that be treated? Intellectual property fears of, hey, I put a lot of time and a lot of R&D into this. How do I know I'm not going to get ripped off?
Yeah.
So lately in the news, we have heard about the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which was a deal with multiple nations in Europe. I'm sorry, in Asia. And the big news from the president a couple of weeks ago was that China is now interested in being a party to that, which has both upsides and downsides.
Yeah.
Canada, knowing that we're going to Asia, has been, by the way, going there themselves to do their own deal with Japan and other in bilateral
They
deals.
do everything we do.
Because,
yeah.
well, but they will be competing with us in some ways. As much as they're our biggest trading partner and they're our friends. We have been working in Europe on something known both as a transatlantic partnership and also as TAFTA, the Transatlantic Free Trade Agreement. It's the same thing essentially. I mean, between Western Europe and the United States, if we get together and really take down all trade barriers, that's 60% of the economic activity on this planet.
Oh, wow.
So that's a big deal.
Well, before we go too far afield, Dave, exactly what is fast track? And
Fast track,
what's the problem,
Right.
what's the controversy surrounding fast track?
Great question. Because before we can do those bilateral and multilateral agreements, we're doing another T word, TPA, Trade Promotion Authority, also known as fast track. And in the 70s, as Congress started to intrude more and more, and this is like a political science thing, but in the executive powers of the presidency, where the presidents used to say, well, we do anything that's foreign policy and the Senate just ratifies. And Congress said, well, hold on. Trade is a little bit different. That's not a we won't invade you if you don't invade us kind of thing. It's a lot more complicated. And Congress wanted to have a role. And so, and this may have been, Nixon's, as he's leaving and Gerald Ford's coming in, a compromise there with Congress to say, okay, you're going to have a role, but what we can't have is, we can't have 535 members of the U.S. Congress negotiating with a foreign power. So how about this? The president negotiates, then Congress, both houses, not just the Senate, get to see the whole thing for an up or down vote on the deal. So hence fast track that Congress doesn't negotiate the whole thing, but votes up or down on a trade package.
Which deals fall under it?
Well, then any individual deal with a particular country or multiple countries. So if we want to do this trans-Pacific or transatlantic, there's another one called TISA, Trade in Services Agreement, which just applies to services, not manufactured goods. Any of those would then go to Congress. But TPA or fast track expired in 2007. So right now the Obama administration doesn't have the permission to actually finish any of these trade deals without Congress voting for that.
Do you think it's going to go through?
It has
be reinstated, I guess.
It has become a hotbed issue. Perhaps by the time this airs, we'll even have a vote.
Okay.
But frankly, I mean, this is one where Speaker Boehner has put his word out there that he'll get it done, and there are people who have been gunning for him and his speakership over this issue.
Yeah. Good for the United States and good for Pennsylvania.
Great for Pennsylvania and good for the United States.
Okay, Dave, thanks for coming by and sharing your thoughts and this information with us and our viewers. We will see you again next week on Behind the Headlines. Don't forget to check us out on YouTube, and don't forget to check us out at voiceofpa.net. We'll see you again next week.